Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going on a seriously incredible journey. We're taking one of the most famous legends in human history. Yeah, that story you probably know about a giant tower reaching for the heavens. And we're gonna literally dig down into the physical, mud brick foundations of the ancient world to find its surprising archaeological roots.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Did the Tower of Babel actually exist? I mean, it's a question that has completely fascinated historians, theologians, and archaeologists for centuries. So to answer it, we have to transition out of the realm of pure mythology and launch a genuine historical investigation straight into the sands of ancient Mesopotamia.
Section 1. The Tower of Babel Myth. Before we can unearth the actual history, we really need to look closely at the original story, right? You'll find it in chapter 11 of the book of Genesis, and it paints a pretty powerful picture. The story goes that following a great flood, a completely united human race, all speaking a single, universal language, migrates to the land of Shinar. Today we know that area as Lower Mesopotamia. And there they agree to build this magnificent city and a massive tower with its top in the sky. Their goal? Simply to make a name for themselves and prevent being scattered across the earth.
But as the story goes, Yahweh observes this massive construction project and sees humanity's hubris. In response, he confounds their speech. Suddenly they can't understand each other, and they're scattered across the globe. The city is just left there, totally unfinished, and it's given a very specific name. In Genesis, the name Babel is derived from the Hebrew verb balal, which basically means to jumble, to confuse, or to confound. It's so cool because conceptually, this ancient story gives us the very idea and the root word of babbling today.
Section 2. Ziggurats, Stairways to Heaven. Now what's really interesting is when we shift from the biblical text into the physical reality of ancient Mesopotamia. To understand Babel, you absolutely have to understand the ziggurat. The word itself comes from the ancient Akkadian zikratum, which stems from a verb meaning to protrude or to build high. Starting way back in the 3rd millennium BCE, the Sumerians, Akkadians, and Babylonians built these massive terrace step pyramids. They were engineered with a core of sun-baked mud bricks and then faced with these incredibly durable, colorful fired bricks on the outside, and each step was just a bit smaller than the one below it.
But here's the thing. The motive behind these structures is where the history completely diverges from the myth. The biblical narrative frames the tower as this act of extreme human arrogance, like a direct challenge to God. But the actual Mesopotamian purpose, it was entirely reverent. These were exclusive sanctuaries built to host, entice, and care for the city's patron gods. They weren't built for humans to climb up to heaven, they were actually built as a stairway for the gods to come down to earth, where these powerful priests would tend to their needs.
Section 3. Etemenanki, the real tower.
So you might be wondering, which specific ziggurat actually inspired the biblical writers? We're zooming in on the primary historical suspect from the period of the Babylonian captivity. Meet Etemenanki. In Sumerian, this translates beautifully to the temple of the foundation of heaven and earth. This thing was a colossal ziggurat, located right in the heart of Babylon, dedicated to the Mesopotamian god Marduk. It was an absolute marvel of mathematics and architecture, and it completely dominated the skyline of the ancient world.
Let's walk through the timeline here, because it builds a picture of a monument that honestly seems a bit cursed. Etemenanki suffered this tragic, multi-generational cycle of destruction and rebuilding. First, it was destroyed in 689 BCE by the Assyrian king Sennacherib. Then, it was gloriously rebuilt by Neo-Babylonian kings, including Nebuchadnezzar II. Later still, Alexander the Great captured Babylon and ordered the crumbling tower demolished so he could rebuild it perfectly, but he died before the work could even begin. Finally, around 275 BCE, get this, the Seleucid prince Antiochus I tripped on the rubble, got so incredibly angry, he just ordered his elephant drivers to destroy whatever was left.
Section 4. Mythical heights versus reality. We know it was big, but exactly how big was it? Let's look at the physics and engineering behind this. And this brilliantly illustrates the human tendency to exaggerate over time. Just look at these historical claims. The ancient Book of Jubilees claimed the tower was over 1.5 miles high. By the Middle Ages, the historian Giovanni Villani confidently wrote it was nearly 6 miles high. 6 miles! But modern scholars looking at structural physics and its 6-level terrace design estimate Etemenanki was actually somewhere around 66 meters, or about 216 feet tall.
But what if they had just kept building? According to modern engineering analysis by J.E. Gordon, a tower with parallel walls made of ancient mud bricks could theoretically reach a maximum height of 2.1 kilometers.
That's about 1.3 miles. Go any higher than that, and the sheer dead weight of the bricks would cause the bottom of the tower to absolutely crush itself into dust.
But actually, here is a truly surprising piece of scientific reality. Even if they had tapered the walls to support all that extra weight, the builders of Shinar would have run into a biological limit long before a structural one. The workers simply would have run short of oxygen. They would have found it literally impossible to breathe at those extreme altitudes. So, the lack of oxygen would have stopped construction before the bricks ever failed.
Section 5. The Legacy of Languages.
From ancient physics, let's zoom back out for a second to examine how this single legend influenced global culture and linguistic theories for centuries. Because what's truly amazing is that this motif of a tower to the heavens is a universally human idea. Anthropologists have found surprisingly similar myths all over the globe. In Mexico, Toltec legends speak of giants building a tall tower to survive a second deluge, only to have their languages confounded. In Arizona, there are indigenous myths of a man building a house to heaven that gets destroyed by thunderbolts. Similar tales echo in Nepal and even in Botswana, where Lozi mythology tells of wicked men building a tower of masts to pursue a creator god, only for the masts to collapse and just crack their skulls.
Meanwhile, back in Europe, the Babel myth had a profound impact on science. Or actually, scratch that, more like pseudoscience. For centuries during the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, scholars went on this wild hunt for the Adamic language. That's basically the single, uncorrupted language supposedly spoken by Adam in the Garden of Eden. The craziest part is that early nationalists bizarrely claimed their own modern languages were the original human tongue. You had Renaissance writers passionately arguing that Swedish or Dutch or German was the uncorrupted language of paradise simply because their ancestors supposedly weren't at Babel.
Which brings us right up to today. You know, the physical mud bricks of Etemenanki may have been crushed by time and elephants, but the ambition, that remains. As we look at our modern skyline, piercing the clouds with glass and steel, and as we use real-time translation apps to instantly break down the barriers of human language, we really have to ask, are our modern skyscrapers and technologies just humanity's newest attempts to rebuild the Tower of Babel? It's a really fascinating thought to leave you with. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.